Hello, my name is Jim Webb, and I'm here to demonstrate today some of the principles of judo. We'll be going through some of the throws, then some of the hold downs, some of the chokes, and then consequently some of the arm bars that you'll see when doing mat work. Now the first principle that I want to demonstrate today is that of Ju. Now in judo we talk about Judo. The principle of Ju has been mistranslated many different ways. The Ju that I'm discussing here today is the actual Ju that they teach when I go to the Kodokan and train. And that is that we're going to see the ebb and flow of energy between the two people who are practicing judo. The first way that I'm going to demonstrate this principle was something called Showman Ate, which is a basic strike. Here, and I'm going to bring up my hand at the very last second in order so I can disguise my intentions. So in Showman Ate, I'll be moving in using my entire body, and I'll strike him, in this case, directly to the chest, here. And you notice that I use my legs and my core body and my arm as well. The ended up power was being with my arm, coming out, starting with my legs and coming out through my arm. So that's the principle of Showman Ate. You're using your entire body in order to execute the strike. I'll have Camille do Showman Ate to me now. Okay, now one of the things about Showman Ate is it demonstrates the Ju. All of the power of his technique is moving in a linear direction directly toward me. Once again, here. However, if I am able to redirect that energy, something interesting can happen. That's a throw called Uki-otoshi. It's the first throw that you'll see in the Nage-no-kata. And it's there so that we can demonstrate the impact of Ju, how you can redirect energy using your opponent's own energy and redirecting it in a different way. Now the interesting thing about Showman Ate is you've got to time it just right. This is very much a timing issue. So when he comes in, if he hits me and he hits me late, I'm going to go down, right? So if he demonstrates it and I decide not to, I react too late, I go down. If I react too early, he pulls his arm back because he knows something's up. So I've got to wait just as he's coming in, just as he starts to make contact, so that I can execute the technique without him understanding exactly what's going to happen. So this is very much timing, something you have to practice quite a lot. So one more time. Notice how I just took and redirected his energy. I was able to throw Uki-otoshi. So that's Uki-otoshi. Now what if I decide to move too early and he pulls his arm back? This is what we have. We have to continue to understand which direction the energy is flowing in this case. So here, as he comes in, I start to move early, he pulls his arm back. Now I'm able to move in and execute a throw called Sumi-otoshi, because he's starting to rotate his body this direction. I step in. That way. So, excuse me, so in real time, it's here, I move early, move. There's my Sumi-otoshi. Of course, Sumi-otoshi is not something that you see a lot of in competition. So for a competitor, we use the same hand motions here, but we're going to do O-sotogari, which is a competition throw. So for O-sotogari, just listen, for O-sotogari, okay, I can initiate by pulling him this direction, because if you start to pull a person that direction, he's immediately going to go in the different direction that way. So I pull here, as he snaps the other direction, I step in, and there's what I had for my Sumi-otoshi motion. Pull this way, and then there's my O-sotogari. I'm just allowing him, I'm just going in the direction that he's allowing me to go using his own momentum. So that's 3 throws that we've just done.
Okay.
We're going to demonstrate the Seiwanagi is done in the old Jiu-Jitsu style. So as Uke decides to come in and execute a strike, I would do a harder block. I would step in and I would place my shoulder directly underneath his armpit here, making sure that his palm is out this direction once I gain control of his wrist. So I'm here. Now here, I can execute an arm lock this way because his palm's up at the same time while throwing him. Now I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to grab here, and then I can execute Seoi-nage this way. So that would be the old Jujutsu style Seoi-nage that is also what you'll see, very like what you'll see in the Nage-no-kata. Now competitors have learned to put a lot more power into that technique. So from a competitor standpoint, what we're seeing is we'll do it from the grips. Now one of the interesting things on the grips is I can either grip, typically 1 of 3 places. I can grip down here, which gives me a very strong control over his hand. Okay, but at the same time, I have to do more motion in order to get him to become off balance, to get kazushi. I can get way up here, but now if I grain way up here around where his tricep is, now his hand can move all over the place, and I may not have as much control as I need. If I gain right around, get a grip right around his elbow, at this point I can control most of the arm. And this is where a Seoi-nage person typically likes to get his grip. It depends, of course, on the player, but this is where they typically like. Tai Toshi guys, typically here. Seoi-nage guys, typically here. And then I rotate my hand counterclockwise with the thumb in, and see, I take the slack out of the gi, and I can control the arm. So as I do my Seoi-nage, I step in, cross step, I get a deep back step here, and I'm locking the arm, and at the same time, I'm rotating this out. And my old sensei, Vincent Tamura, used to say, read the watch. So I'm rotating this arm out as I come in, and it gives me room underneath to get my body. I get a deep back step, get my hips across, and now I've got Seoi-nage. So that would be more of a competitor style of a Seoi-nage. Okay, now we're going to demonstrate, once again, we're going back to the Nage-no-kata and things competitors should be learning from the Nage-no-kata. This particular throw is called ukigoshi, floating hip throw. So it's called floating because I'm going to float him around my body when I throw him. In this case, Uke is going to execute a left-handed strike, and you're going to notice as I come in, I'm moving beneath the energy level so that I can redirect the flow around myself. So as he comes in, there. So that's uki-goshi. One of the things that's interesting on that is, as he comes in and does the overhead strike, I have to move inside the strike. Because if I stand out here, I'll take it in the head. But if I move underneath, I'm moving inside of his strike, and therefore it makes it easier for me to come in and do the throw. So that's uki-goshi. However, now this is Jigoro Kano's favorite throw. And like anybody else, if you practice with somebody all the time, people kind of figure out what your favorite throw is, and are able to start to figure out ways to block it, slip it off, those kinds of things. So Jigoro Kano had to start to figure out ways in order to work around that. So there's 2 throws, and you'll notice in the Nage-no-kata, we have them in sequential order. First you have uki-goshi, then harai-goshi, then surikomi-goshi. So harai-goshi in essence is, and I'll show them all off of the strike, just so we can show it from the same position. So the first one, uki-goshi, he comes in, and I get my throw. The second one, though, is if I come in and he decides, because he knows I've thrown him uki-goshi a whole bunch of times, he's going to jump around. This time, come in and just jump around. And here, he just moves around. So I've got to have something in the way to guide the throw so that he can't jump around. And in this case, that's going to be harai-goshi, a sweeping hip. So as he comes in, same strike, I'm here, but I know he's going to jump around. I'm going to read the watch, step in, and I have harai goshi this time. You notice how my leg kept him from jumping around. Of course, now you've got it to where he doesn't go around this way. He comes around, he'll block and do a good defense by blocking with his body. So this time he's coming in here, and I have my hand on the inside this time. Now for this one, I've got to have a very different back step. Before, I was able to come in here and throw. Now, because he's defending, I've got to take my left foot that's stepping back, and I've got to step on the line that goes between our two toes here, which means I have to have a very deep back step. Then I have to have reading the watch. Now the deep back step and reading the watch opens up a hole here that enables me to get my hips throw really deep, which is what you need on Sorikomi Goshi. So deep back step, hips all the way across, and he weighs a couple of ounces as he goes over. So that's Sorikomi Goshi. The more you can bend your knees on that, the stronger the technique's going to be. Okay, for the next technique, we're going to show the impacts. It's called Tomoe Nage, which people call the circle throw, the stomach throw. But in essence, we're going to show how you can get a person moving one direction, just as we did with our Sumiotoshi move. We move a person one direction, then when he starts to resist, you take advantage of his resistance, and then you move in a different direction, and you understand where he is resisting, and then you come underneath that, and that enables you to do the throw. So this is a Tomoe Nage. So we're here, okay, I'm the aggressor this time as Tori, and I'm going to move him backwards, at which point, at some point, he's going to go, wait a minute, I don't want to move backwards and get pushed off the mat where I'll get penalty points. So I push him off this way, he pushes forward, and as soon as he pushes forward, I get him up on his toes, and then I'm going to shoot down underneath and throw. So that's Tomoe Nage. So one more time, I'll do it. This time I'm going to push him until such time that he really pushes back hard. I'm going to understand that he's pushing back with his upper body. I'm going to drop down underneath and then pull him over the top of me. So here, aggress. 1, 2, 3, pushes, and over he goes. So that's Tomoe Nage, or circle throw. The next principle we're going to demonstrate is what if your opponent anticipates the motion that you're about to do. So we're going to go, once again, going back to the Nage-no-kata, things we're supposed to learn. Uranagi and Yokoguruma. So Uranagi, in this case, is done from the strike, to where my opponent comes in, tries to hit me with an overhead strike. I drop down below the strike, and then I throw him, using my hips and my body. So here. So that's Uranagi. Now, what happens this time, he kind of figures out what I'm going to do, so he decides to get me in a headlock. It's probably best to so here, but he gets me in a headlock, and just so they know that now I have a harder time throwing him down because he's keeping my shoulders forward, so I'm going to redirect and throw him in this direction. Watch what my leg does here. So, in a little bit more real time, he strikes, I come in, he blocks, and I redirect the throw in another direction. So that's that's Uranagi to Yokoguruma. So this time, I'm going to throw my opponent, and I'm going to transition into groundwork. So here, just going to happen to throw him here with Hanagoshi. So I get him to land this direction and immediately go into mat work here. Now this is called Nage-no-kata. Nage-no-kata. Now Nage-no-kata, a couple of things. One is Kesa means scarf hold, but it's not the kind of scarf that you put in your hair or that women put in their hair or something. Kesa is a scarf that comes across your body like this, and it's something especially religious people, Buddhist monks and things in Japan look at. It has wise sayings on it, so when they're meditating, they look at the wise sayings and they think about what they are. But if you notice that I'm coming across his body like a kesa, like the ones that you have in Japan that the Buddhist monks wear. And the other thing is, I've got a very strong grip on this arm here. That enables me to do a couple of things. One is, as I enter into mat work here, I can keep him from bridging by keeping his head up, and at the same time, if I rotate my body hard enough here, I can actually get him to tap out. Just by rotating my body and keeping a really good grip on this shoulder and on this arm, and putting pressure on the chest. One of the keys to Nage-no-kata is, if you think of water coming down really hard this direction and keeping water in the center of mass of the body, that's what you're trying to do, is keep your balance on top of his center mass so that he can't move around a lot. And as he moves, then you have to shift with him, always making sure that you're keeping your balance on his balance so that he can't get out. So that's one of the keys to all of this mat work. So so there's my Nage-no-kata here. Notice I'm here, center mass. If I get too high, I get rolled over. If I get too far this way, he can do an upward turn escape and get out this way. So I have to be that's why the importance of keeping myself center mass. If I'm here, what happens if this arm comes out, gets loose? I can immediately press it across his face, get a grip here. I'll move this way so the camera can see better. So I'm here. He gets that arm loose. I place it across his face. I get a figure 4 grip here with my hands, shift so that my knee is right in the base of his spine. And I take my neck and shoulders and I push his arm into his face here, and I've got kata gatame. And if I'm really good, I can actually execute a choke from here. But this is how you get kata gatame. So now I've transitioned from Nage-no-kata into kata gatame. Okay? From here, if he continues to move around, I can shift this direction, keeping weight on his chest, and I've got Nage-no-kata here, which is the smothering hold. So notice I'm still pressure on the chest. Both arms underneath. My hands are underneath his arms so that he can't have freedom of his arm movement there. And just continue to smother. And if I have to, I can get on my toes this way and keep my hips down. If I get my hips too high up, he has room to move. So keep my hips down here or in here. Keeping pressure always on the chest. So that's Nage-no-kata. Okay, now we've transitioned more into groundwork. We've gone through our Osai Waza, now we're going to Shime Waza. So I'm going to talk the principles now behind Hadaka-jime and Ukuri-iri-jime. Hadaka-jime is strangling where you're not using the gi. People call it the naked strangle. The principles behind these things, so I've got to come in and cut off the carotid artery here that brings the blood into the brain. And it doesn't take long. If you do a proper choke, it really doesn't take long. And the principle is I place something here, and all I have to do is push his head in the direction of the choke. So if I have something here, if I just take and push this into the choke, I can just choke just like that. But nothing's ever that simple. So in judo, we have to have more control. We have to have more control. So in Hadaka-jime, I'm here. Notice I've got my elbow in front controlling this shoulder. Here, I've got this hand. Once again, I've got my figure four lock with my hands. I'm controlling this shoulder, and now my shoulder is going to be pushing into the choke this direction. So I control the shoulder, control the shoulders, set the choke, and then push into the choke. And you notice I brought him back while I did that. I brought him back while I did that, and that is so that I can get a better angle with my shoulder to push him into the choke. Okay, Okuriyeri Jime is the same way. Only now I've got more control. So I set the choke here. Now instead of having no grip, I've got a grip here on his gi. I cross here. Now I have more control, but the same thing. I've got this little bony part of my wrist right up against the carotid artery. In, and bring it back slightly, and shoulder into the choke. And out he goes. A couple of seconds, and he'll be unconscious. Now, one of the most important things to remember when you're doing shimewaza from the rear is the difference between strangulation and asphyxiation. Now, strangulation is where we're actually cutting off the carotid artery to the brain. The person just, simply goes to sleep. But for a lack of, if you did it for a long time, 20 seconds or more, bad things can happen. For a few seconds, a lot of studies have shown that it's not dangerous. Asphyxiation, however, is putting something directly against the windpipe. So if you're doing Hadaka Jime, it should be done with this little bony part of the wrist up against his carotid artery here, and there's your choke. If you've got it here and you've got the bony part of the wrist directly against his windpipe, okay, that's asphyxiation. That is very illegal in judo because it's a very, very dangerous move. You can actually crush the windpipe. All right? From there, we're going to move to what happens from the front. So we'll talk about two techniques, Nami Jujigatame and Kata Jujigatame. Now, the easiest way for new students to remember is Nami Jujigatame. When you're sitting here in Seiza, both your hands are sitting palm down. That's the way that your hands go in Nami Jujigatame. Now, one of the things you want to do is get your hands in as deep as possible on both sides. Notice I'm grabbing my thumb on the inside, my hand in as deep as possible, bony part of the wrist up against the carotid artery. So you've got to get these chokes in really, really deep. The other key is pulling them down into your body. This is where you're strongest in judo, right here. Why is that? This is what you do all day, every day. You're eating here, you're working at your desk, you're doing schoolwork. You're strongest right in here, so you want to get them down into your strength zone. So I get them as deep as I possibly can, bony part against the carotid, and I pull them down into my strength zone. And I get the strangulation technique, shimewaza. Kata Jujigatame is actually what you see more in competition. So in this case, instead of having one up, one down, I'm going to have one that's down so that I can sink that in really. Now notice this time, before I had my thumb on the inside, this time I've got my fingers on the inside. So I slip that in as deep as I can get it, and then I have this one here. A lot of competitors like to slip that there, reach on the same side, duck the head underneath, and now you've got a really deep grip. Now you pull them down into your working zone, and you've got a really, really strong competition shimewaza. Okay, this time we're going to transition from a standing technique into kansetsuwaza, arm locks. We're going to show a couple. We're going to show Jujigatame and Udigatame. Now, Jujigatame, cross-lock, is actually very, very popular. You'll see a lot of competitors doing. So in this case, I'm here. I'm going to throw in a modified Hanegoshi here so that I can get you into the camera. Now, first thing I do from this position is get my continue. Notice I always control this arm as I throw. That's in Rondora you do that so that you can make sure that your opponent takes a nice fall. In competition, you do that so you can do techniques like this. First thing I do is I get my knee in so that he can't turn away from me, and I start to control his body. Then I'm going to sit down so that my hips come right underneath his shoulder, and my leg's going to shoot across his face and actually come and touch on his shoulder here. Now notice I've got hips deep. I've locked my legs together here so that my hips are underneath the shoulder. I see where his little finger here is pointing down. Now all I have to do is slightly pull this way. And I've got an arm lock. And he taps and I win the match. Now the other thing that happens quite a lot is, what if he grabs his two arms together? I'm here, and he's got his arms together. Well, in this case, I use my core body. Now my core body, meaning my hips, my upper body, my shoulders, is stronger than this arm. So if I can come in here and break this grip, and then use my back and my core body, and make sure that my hips are in tight and my knees are locked together, I can break that off, and I can still get my Jujigatame here. So that's Jujigatame. From the same position, if I'm here and he starts to rotate toward me because he knows I do Jujigatame all the time, and he starts to reach up with this hand, I'm going to stop and lock this shoulder down by having my knee across his chest here, and then using between my neck and my head, lock here, looking where the elbow is, and then just putting pressure this direction. And you've got enough, now he's tapped out from the other arm. So now we've learned, when we throw a person, pay attention to where his arms are, which direction he's rotating once you throw him.